Thanks a lot for coming in.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Something about this community appeals to you?
This is a wonderful place to live.
For Kelowna Now, this is Camp Mulgat. And we're joined by filmmaker Adam Scorgie. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Really enjoy your work, and your latest film is all about Grant Fuhr.
Yeah, making Coco, the Grant Fuhr story, and we're going to be bringing it here to Kelowna on June 16th. I'm with Grant in attendance. I'm really delighted to be able to bring him here. I've built a great relation with him and as a friend, so I'm excited to bring him to my hometown.
So yes, you're currently living, you sort of grew up in Kelowna, but currently living in Edmonton. So Grant Fuhr, perfect subject matter.
Yeah.
You know, a locally raised for Edmonton kid who winds up, a hero of a goaltender, and unusually a black person, which creates some drama in his life.
Yeah, Grant has a very interesting story. Like when it was first brought to me, obviously I grew up as an Oilers fan, even though I was here in BC, so I was interested right away. But with the doc, you got to make sure that you have conflict resolution, celebration. You have to have all those things in order for it to make a great film. So when we looked at it, though, like a lot of people didn't realize that Grant was adopted as a child, right? He had white parents, black child, growing up in Spruce Grove, Alberta, drafted, and then he had, the suspension controversy and all these things that make a great film. And then, as I was telling you off camera there, like the controversies of how the suspension went down and how honest and open he is about everything, it only, like if you were not a Grant Fuhr fan before, you become a fan of the man afterwards because he's just so honest and transparent about how it all goes down. It's a much more emotional doc than most people think. Like, you don't have to be a hockey fan to watch this. When you watch this, there's greatest compliment we got is when we did the screening in Edmonton and the Oilers got involved and we did it in the arena. We had 3,000 people come out for the premiere, and my family and I are sitting next to Wayne Gretzky's watching it, and he interviewed for it, obviously, and he was like, I didn't know how emotional this was, and that Grant really opens up about his soul. He was like, congratulations, like you guys did an excellent job.
So yeah, he stood out because of his skin color, but I think you observed that, and when you talked to Grant about it, he didn't really encounter racism about that in Canada.
Yeah, he said that he wasn't the guy that bared the brunt for that. He said it wasn't until he moved to Buffalo that he really experienced it. He really says guys like Willie O'Ree and Val James and some of those other guys were the guys that really were the leaders or were at the forefront of that, dealing with that in the league. Growing up in Spruce Grove, he said like even when we interviewed other players like Messier and Gretz and everyone, and they're like, we didn't even really think about it like that. We just knew we had a great goaltender back there that was a great guy and super calm. The thing that makes Grant what they say the ultimate money goalie in their opinion, like the best of all time, is that there's a very different time when it was high scoring, 8-6 games, 7-5 games, is that nobody could put it past them like Grant. Grant could let in 4 and he could brush it off and be like, they're not getting the next one. Right? If that's the same, you only
because
really...
his teams weren't known for defense.
No, and that's why Wayne says in his opinion, he's like, if we had a defensive team like New Jersey or Calgary, there'd be no argument who the greatest goaltender of all time is. He's like, but we were trying to get more goals. There was times where we left Grant completely...
where was Paul Coffey on that play?
Well, we have a clip of Koff saying in the film, he's like, if you're expecting me to block shots, I ain't doing it, right? And then we had Poplinski and some of the Flames guys joking, be like, did Grant ever really see his defense other than when he was coming out of the dressing room? He's like, and he keeps a stone cold face. He's like, no, but seriously, other than when he walked out of the dressing room, did he see his defensive team?
It's so true. Plus, you see the highlights of goalies playing in that era.
Yeah.
These little pads they had on, and he's not that big a guy.
No, Grant's a small guy.
So he's a little guy wearing little pads, throwing himself at pucks.
And that's what made him so exciting too. Is he was really the first guy that had this crazy flair, right? These big saves, and because he had to make himself appear big, so he'd come so far out, right, to challenge, and he would bait you with his glove hand because his reflexes and stuff were so good. A lot of people say he was the first true athlete in net, right? Like he was a really gifted athlete.
Well, yeah, I always wonder what makes a great, and actually our camera guy Nick, he's a goalie. What makes a great goalie? Because you see different body types. You see the really big guy, or you see these really skinny little guys. Long arms seem to be good. I don't know what makes a good goalie.
From working with Grant, what he suggests is it's here. That's the one thing about a goalie that's different else is your mental game has to be more than any part of it. And that's why you can see the body type. Sometimes there's guys that are 6'5" that are really good. Sometimes there's smaller guys. Yeah. The mental game is because when Grant played, he didn't even have his first true goalie coach till he was in Buffalo. He'd won 5 Stanley Cups before he had an actual goalie.
He was just making it up.
He was figuring it out as he went in there. They would say, watch tape of other guys, just get comments from other goalies. So he did that to learn how to do it.
Right. I want to double back. Okay, you said he did have some problems when he was in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And he tried to join a golf club. What
Yeah. So Grant had tried to join a prestigious golf club in Buffalo, and they had said, sorry, we don't accept people like yourself. And Grant, and honestly, being a naive Canadian, a black Canadian, he was kind of like, oh, like hockey players aren't allowed to play here? And then, because he's like, 5 of my teammates have, and they're like, no. They didn't come right out and say it, but it was because he was a man of color. And when we were interviewing Grant, like that's how we ended the story. And we're like, Grant, there's a lot more you're not telling us. And he's like, oh, you want to hear the rest? And we're like, yes, this is a documentary. That's what we want to hear. And he's like, oh, well, after that, the fans were so mad that had happened to me. They burned a swastika in the golf course. They had fired all the board members. They then rescinded, and they came back and said, we'd love to offer you a position. At that point, Grant had already signed somewhere else. But Grant said for him, other than, he said comments on the ice, people trying to get under your skin, but he never took it as them trying to really be vicious and racist. He really said he didn't experience it. He was blessed that way. He said, I played on a great team that was winning. People were happy. Like, we just didn't experience that other than when he went to Buffalo.
And for people who meet Grant on the 16th, are they going to meet a guy that's pretty well-centered at this stage? It's tough for these athletes. You see people with problems from head injuries. You see people with substance abuse problems. It's tough to have a career like that where it all comes to you so early in life, and then the career ends, and it's a tough transition.
Grant, it has to be, I'd say, one of the most comfortable athletes of where he is now, and I think 2 reasons for that is, one, he's been so honest about everything in his career, the highs and the lows. He's talked about it in a book. He talks about it openly in our film about the suspension, and that he so loves his life. Now, he has a great wife, Lisa, and the two of them, they do celebrity tournaments all over, and he found his second love, golf. So he found something else that can still challenge him mentally now that his body just can't, because his knees are shot, right, and his elbow, like, he can hardly even lift his one shoulder up from the shoulder injuries, and I mean, like a pro athlete has. He has injuries for sure, but as far as who he is as a human being, he's never been more comfortable. I think, the doc and the book and everything, and him just being so transparent about it, he's like, I have no skeletons in my closet. Like, right. I've shared them all. So for me...
And obviously, he's coming out with you for the screening of the film. Yeah. He obviously likes it.
He loves it. Which is always the best part is, right, when your client, like, him and his wife love it, and they love what was shared, and we've had a tremendous time working together. I've become friends with them now, not just work. That's right. One of my favorite part about the docs is longer than dramatic features. So you really get to know who you're making the story about. And, I think Grant, Lisa, and my wife will be friends with the Fuhrs,
right.
Probably
so
forever.
People who are old enough to be Grant Fuhr fans will likely learn something about him that they probably didn't.
They'll learn a lot. So that's perfect. It's the perfect time to do his story, because if you grew up watching him, you get to relive those moments. We have all this great footage because our director, Don Metz, had been shooting the Oilers since Wayne had come off the plane at 19 years old to come to Edmonton. So we have all this great footage when Grant's first drafted, and his voice is really squeaky, and his big fro, and and all of his highlight careers of what he went through. And then also you'll find details you forgot, like how the suspension went down, because it would not fly today. Right, and just how he was drafted, and how Glenn Sather at first, Grant really did not play well when they came in, and Glenn Sather's like, I'm not drafting this kid's horrible. He let in 8 goals. Like, he had to argue with Barry Fraser. Was like, no, I'm telling you, this kid's special. Right. So right from the get-go, Glenn Sather's like, I don't want this kid. I don't think he's any good.
All right.
So you'll learn a lot about. You'll get to relive those memories if you're an Oilers fan, but you'll also learn a lot about the human being of Grant and just how tremendous he was for hockey, not just as a player, but as a great human being.
Awesome. So June 16th at the Landmark Cinemas?
Yeah, Landmark Grand 10. Tickets are available online if you go to Facebook and look at Kelowna premiere of Making Coco.
Save me a ticket?
Huh? You got it. I got you a ticket.
Thanks a lot, Adam.
Hey, no, thanks for having me on.
And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.